Traci Welch. I'm co-hosting again tonight with Andy Pollock, and we have a special guest, Timothy Ray Brown. I just wanted to take a moment and welcome you guys to the LGBTQ Voice. And being 9/11, we just wanted to wish everybody some peace and some happiness today. A lot happened, 17 years ago, and we're still fighting the fight every day. So thank you for tuning in to our show. Timothy Ray Brown, thank you for being on our show. I actually got a message from Lenny from Seven Hills Behavioral Health. We work together in our community, and we try a partnership as much as we can. So he said, hey, would you like Timothy to come on your show? And I said, sure, just give me an hour and I'll get back to you. I want to do my research. I'm like, oh my God, of course we do.
Thank you.
So thank you for coming to Boston. This is your first trip here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
I'm very, very excited. We did a show a few weeks ago on HIV. We actually had Linda Spinner. Shout out to Linda if you're watching today. A straight woman who got HIV from her husband through her own hardships in her life. So we try and do shows that impact our community and what's going on in and around. Even though you don't live in our area, right. HIV impacts us every day. Yeah. And HIV has been on the rise in our area year after year, and it's men having sex with other men. So for us to have an important guest or a special guest like yourself, we definitely want to thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
So he talks all over the world, guys. So for us to have him on our show, I mean, it's definitely amazing. So tell us, I mean, we know your story because we've done our research. So tell us your story.
Oh, okay. I get tested negative in Seattle in '91, and then I moved to Europe and started out in Barcelona, and then moved to Berlin, and then moved back to Barcelona, and I was with a partner who, at that time, because HIV was a death sentence, he didn't want to know, and he kind of forbade me to get tested. So I didn't get tested, and I reluctantly went along with his wishes, and then my idea of safe sex was basically don't ejaculate inside me.
Yeah.
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 And one time a condom broke, and another time I told the guy, but he was Spanish and Catalan speaker and didn't really get what I said, or purposely ejaculated inside me, and I was really angry. So that's probably the way I got HIV in the first place. Anyway, I started a different relationship and had broken up with, or that guy had broken up with me, and then but we remained friends, and one day he said, I tested positive for HIV, and you should probably get tested yourself. And so I went into the same testing place that he'd been. It was in Berlin. It was a city-run organization, and I didn't know if my test would be positive or negative, but it turned out to be positive, and so the only treatment available at that time was AZT, and I said I don't want to take AZT because I'd heard that people are actually dying from the medication itself, and it wasn't really that effective. And she said, I'll give you, I think you need to start treatment immediately. I'll give you a very small dose of it. And so I started taking that. I think it was pill form. Yeah, definitely. And then luckily the next year in Germany, protease inhibitors came out, and I was able to take those, and so I was able to take those, and then other medication, whatever came out. And when viral load testing was available, I think 98. Okay,
That's all right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I tested positive in 1995, and then viral load testing was possible in like 98, and I think I had a viral load at first, but then then it went down to undetectable. And so the medication was working, and I didn't really have horrible side effects except for with Crixivan.
What was the side effects?
I didn't have negative side effects except for with Crixivan.
What is that?
Crixivan isn't a protease inhibitor. Yeah, okay, I'm getting nods.
We're getting nods
Yeah.
over here.
And it causes lipodystrophy, so I started gaining gut, and I didn't like that, and then Norvir, which some people still take Norvir. At that time, you actually had to keep in the refrigerator, otherwise it would go bad. I had to vomit from it, and so it didn't really agree with my stomach, and so I felt nervous about telling my doctor. I've since become pretty vocal when I have needs, but at that time I just quit taking it, and then my CD4 count went down, and my viral load went up at that point. And the doctor was like, "What's wrong? Something's wrong with your. Don't you think you're taking your treatment as prescribed?" And I finally admitted that I had quit taking Norvir because it was making me ill. And he gave me a lecture about resistance, that if I were to quit taking one of my medications, I could get resistance to other medications, and so he put me on a different regimen, and he did a test on whether or not I have resistance, and as it turned out, I didn't have any resistance at that point. So I continued to take medication. At one point, another doctor at the same practice told me, actually I was thinking of suggesting to take a drug vacation, and I was going to suggest it to him, but he beat me to it and said, I want to try a vacation on you, and so you won't have to take your medication for probably about 6 months. As it turned out, it took about 2 years before my viral load went up and my CD4 count started to decline. And so I actually had a 2-year drug vacation.
That must have been fun.
Yeah,
exactly. Good vacation.
Yeah, they don't suggest that anymore, except if you're in a trial and they want to see if you have like if you've been cured of HIV. So anyway, so until between 1995 and 2006, I did fine. But then I got a diagnosis of a completely unrelated case of leukemia. And I did my research and found out that there were only 6 cases up till then of people having HIV and that kind of leukemia. So I'm sure it was unrelated. So they started out by doing a chemo treatment. When I went into the hospital, I thought that I would have 1 round of chemo and that for a week, and that would be it, and I'd be cured of leukemia. Yeah. But then I found out that I was supposed to have 4 rounds of chemo. Yeah, and I'm like, oh crap. So I did 1 round, and then a second round, and after the second round, the main doctor, who was Dr. Gerhuter, it was a university hospital. He was the head of the ward at that point. And he said, I want to send your blood to the donor bank for stem cell treatments. And I said, okay. I didn't really understand why, because I thought I would have the 4 rounds of chemo and it'd be over. I kind of thought it would go a lot quicker than it actually did. And so he took my blood and sent it to the donor bank, and I would ask him every time I saw him in the hallway how many donors they had found. And the number started out like at 0, and it went up to 267 possible donors, wow, which was an incredibly high number because some people don't have any donors. It's called HLA. It's a tissue type test, and a lot of times donors come from your family. Since I didn't have any family in Germany, there was only my mother, and she was living in Seattle, Washington, so kind of far away from
yeah, can't really donate from there.
Yeah. So they looked for a match outside my family, and because my heritage is mostly Northern European, that's probably why I had so many possible donors in Germany. And so that gave Dr. Huter had paid attention at med school and had heard about something called CCR5 delta 32, which is basically an immunity to HIV. There's still talk going on about why that immunity came about. Probably had something to do with the plague, that people that survived had this immunity, survived the plague, and so he started to look for from the 267 possible donors. He started looking at the German population of those donors, and because they were the easiest to get in Germany, and so they looked and looked and looked, and on the 61st try, they actually found a donor who had that mutation. So he said, well, you could get this transplant, and it would probably make you not have to worry about HIV anymore. He didn't say the word cure, because cure was something that wasn't discussed at that point in history.
There's a hopeful.
Yeah. In fact, I went to, in 2011, I went to this talk in San Francisco, and the title of the talk was cure, still four-letter word. So it was kind of considered a four-letter word, something you didn't say. In fact, I'll get to that. Anyway, I actually said, I didn't want the treatment, because at that point my leukemia was in remission, and so I thought it would stay in remission. I wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. I was thinking on the positive side of things. And I said I'd get the transplant if the leukemia came back. And that was like near the end of 2006. But then around Christmas time, 2006, I got a bone marrow biopsy, and that came back that my leukemia had come back. So at that point, I said, okay, I'll do the transplant. And
but at that time, you've only done the 2 rounds of chemo?
2.5.
2.5?
Yeah, because during the 3rd round of chemo, I developed a sepsis infection.
Gotcha.
And had to be put into an induced coma.
Oh, wow.
So after coming out of the induced coma, Dr. Huter said, I think you need to go on vacation. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And he said, where would be someplace that you'd really like to go to? And I said, Italy. So, because I had a friend who lived in Genoa, Italy, and so I decided to take a trip down to Genoa, and I had in my head that, okay, you're saying I should go on vacation, you're going to pay for it, but that wasn't the case. I paid for it, and I had a really great time. rode a horse with British saddle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and did very well.
Is that your first time
Yeah.
riding a horse?
No, I've ridden Western saddles before,
Oh,
but
cool.
yeah.
Very nice.
So I did that, and then came back, and they started preparing for the transplant. And actually, the transplant took place on February 7th of 2007. So during like January and leading up to the transplant, I did okay. I felt healthy and I felt fine. But then I found out that I had to get another round of chemo, and I was scared of that. So I got the other round of chemo, and they also did full body radiation on me, and and that was basically to annihilate my own immune system to be replaced by another one. So of course I was very susceptible to infection at that point. In Germany, transplants are done in the hospital, and you are in a room which is enclosed and
Sterile?
sterile, yeah, very sterile room. And my mother came, and she had a cold, so she couldn't visit me. Yeah. She actually made 7 trips to Berlin during that period. Before that, she'd been to Berlin once. Yeah. Anyway, I got the transplant on February 7th of 2007, and before the transplant, my partner at the time said, "I don't really want you to take your HIV meds," because he thought that the HIV meds would affect the reproduction of the stem cells, the new stem cells. I've since found out that's not true. My partner, he was a massage therapist and thought he knew medicine better than the doctors.
So you listen to him instead of the doctors.
Right. So anyway, Dr. Hooter came into my room before the transplant and presented me with a list of things that would happen before the transplant, and it said that I would take my HIV meds and continue to take them after that. And I told him that I didn't want to take my HIV meds after that day. And he said, "Well, I'll come back and I'll talk to the other doctors working on this and come back with a new protocol." And so the next day he came, on February 7th, he came back with a new protocol which said that I would take my HIV meds for the last time. And so that's the way I did it. So it was because of my partner at the time saying that he didn't really want me to take my meds.
So you thought it was good advice?
Yeah. I asked him afterwards, he said he thinks that I probably should have continued to take my medication. Actually, in the United States, I think that most, like the doctors recommend that the patients continue to take the medication beyond. But in my case, since I didn't take my medication, they could tell what was going on with my body. They take blood every day, and they would watch the viral load. Of course, since I wasn't taking the medication, it skyrocketed and then dropped way down. And by like mid-May, it had dropped to undetectable without medication.
Wow.
Yeah. And physically, I noticed a difference. Okay, I had to recover from the transplant, which took a little while, and they sent me to a rehab center south of Berlin, and there again I had a wonderful time, and it felt like a vacation. And then I decided I wanted to go go back to work. I was working as a translator from German to English, and my bosses, it was a translation agency owned by two people. One was a translator from I think Italian to, yeah, he was from the Italian or the German-speaking part of Italy.
Yep.
And so he translated from Italian to German, and my main boss would translate from German to English, like myself, and they let me come back to work.
Oh,
So
that's terrific.
yeah, I was able to go back to work, and I decided to go back to the gym. I started a gym membership sometime before this all happened, before I was diagnosed with leukemia, and so with HEV, I had the wasting syndrome, so I was not able to develop muscle weight, and nor any physical muscles. But I suddenly realized that I was gaining muscle weight, and I could see muscle definition on my body.
Oh, terrific.
So I felt like something had happened, that something had changed. And so at some point, I think this was 2008, Dr. Hooter decided to write a paper and submit it to the New England Journal of Medicine.
Yep.
Because that's like the even in Germany, that's considered the Bible of
The who's who of medical?
Of medical. And he submitted it. It was co-authored by other doctors, other researchers in the lab, and doctors that I saw pretty much every day when they came by on their rounds, and the paper was rejected by the New England Journal of Medicine
Because they're like, no way.
Yeah. Dr. Hooter was actually a hematologist, so it had absolutely nothing to do with HEV before this point. And so I'm sure that they thought, okay, all these doctors and researchers that had been working on HEV cure for a long time thought that how could a hematologist, a German hematologist who wasn't really even higher up in the ranks of German medicine, come up with a cure for HEV. So the New England Journal of Medicine gave the paper back to him, and he's like, it's perfect. So he sent it back the same way. And that happened 3 times. And then he was invited to present a poster at CROI here in Boston. And, in Boston. We're not in Boston.
Yep.
Anyway, he wasn't allowed to speak, but they gave him the poster at the back of the room, in the poster room, and so people would wander by the poster and probably ignored it, but key researchers in HEV cure actually saw the poster and thought that it looked plausible, and in the paper, he didn't actually claim I was cured. He complained, or he said it was the patient had achieved a long-term remission. So yeah, and anyway, they decided to have a meeting in San Francisco and invited researchers from AMFAR, American Foundation for AIDS Research,
Okay.
based in New York, and Stephen Deeks from UCSF, who actually turned out to be my doctor when I moved to San Francisco,
Oh, cool.
and other researchers, and then a reporter from the Washington Post, and so at the end of the discussion, somebody asked who in this room thinks that this patient has really achieved a long-term remission? And everyone raised their hand.
Yep.
And so the reporter from the Washington Post decided to publish that, and then the New York Times didn't want to be outdone, so they decided to publish that too, and then the New England Journal of Medicine came back and said, we've reconsidered and decided to publish.
Oh, all right, we'll take it now.
We'll take it in.
So at that point, I think I believed that I, in fact, was cured of HIV. I don't think I really believed it up to that point that I was cured. At that point, they started using the word cure rather than long-term remission. There is debate going on now of whether it should still be called long-term remission or cure.
So which do you prefer?
Cure.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to take my cure away from me.
Oh,
yeah.
no.
Yeah.
So how did you feel? I mean, what was your, were you elated? Were you?
Yeah, I was elated, yeah. Probably the best thing is that I did not have to take the HIV the ARVs anymore, that I could quit those. And at that point, it had been a couple of years, and so I'm not terribly emotional, but I don't really show my emotions outwardly, but inside I was elated.
So what about your family and friends when you heard the news, or when they all heard the news that you were cured?
They were excited, yeah.
I can only imagine.
My former roommate in Seattle, at one point she had said, if you get HIV, I'm never going to talk to you again. And so I was very afraid to tell her for a long time until I was actually cured.
Sure?
Yeah, sure, cured by the words of the New England Journal of Medicine.
So before I go on, I'm just gonna, Mariah, have we got any comments, hellos?
No?
Nothing? Wow, I guess people are just listening tonight.
Wow.
Yeah, usually people will call in, or not call in, but talk to us what's going on over there. So you talked about, the treatment real quick. So what was the transplant? What was that like? What was the process of that?
Okay, they had basically annihilated my own immune system, and it had to be replaced. And so the transplant was very, very uneventful. Of course, I was scared that the cells would not arrive. The donor was actually, he was German from the Cologne area, but living in New York City, going to university there. And so he had to fly to Cologne and
wow.
go to the hospital and do the whole procedure. The procedure, they used to have to actually take out the bone marrow from the bones, and it required an operation.
Is it the shin?
I think so, yeah. But now they give the donor a medication which kicks the stem cells out into the blood, and then it's filtered out of the blood. They're filtered out of the blood. And so when it arrived, it was like it was kind of like getting a blood transfusion. It was yellow, kind of looked like I had transfusions of
Plasma?
thrombocytes. What's the word I want? Basically the stuff that thickens your blood.
Not sure what the name of that
What's
is,
it called?
guys.
No.
Well, something that thickens.
Yeah.
Okay,
Anyway.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was basically. It's like getting a transfusion, and I just laid there in bed and let it run in. It took about 15 minutes, so it was a pretty boring day.
For you,
Yeah,
not for the
me.
person who
Yeah,
had the.
right.
Did you meet the fellow?
No, I didn't.
You never have.
In the German system, you can petition the donor agency to meet the donor after 2 years.
Yeah.
And the donor can petition to meet the patient after 2 years. I actually never submitted my petition until several months ago. I did that because a researcher said he wanted to have me and my donor and
A meet and greet?
Yeah, a meet and greet, and also Dr. Huter come. It was actually a researcher in Honolulu, Hawaii, at the University of Hawaii, and so I said, okay, I'll get on it.
That would be a very nice reunion.
Right. Yeah.
You know, thank
unfortunately, I
you for
haven't
your
heard
life.
anything yet.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have there been doubters out there? Have there been people who've been asking you, you know, is this really true? And, you know, questioning the validity of this, or?
I've actually had people say that they didn't really believe I actually had HIV in the first place, and asked for medical records, and I think I just kind of ignored those. I wrote a paper. I basically told my story for a journal called AIDS Research in Human Retroviruses, and it was published and picked up by Yahoo News.
Wow.
And they kind of cut it down, and so it was more so the general public would understand it.
Yeah, because Timothy, when I was doing the research offline, guys, I had to ask him what some of these words were actually, because I can't even pronounce some of the words in the treatments that you had and that you had graft versus host disease, and another one that's just too long to say, guys. Both transplant complications that were potentially fatal. This means the procedure should not be performed on others with HIV, even if sufficient numbers of suitable donors could be found. So you could have died.
I think my chance of survival in the first place was only 50%. So that's why I said no to, because I figured, okay, I can continue to take my ARVs for many years, and I'll do just fine on that. So I was happy being HIV positive. And I wasn't going to risk death
I'm good right now. If I do that, what's going to happen? I got to go this way.
Exactly. And it's something that I wouldn't recommend to my worst enemy.
That was actually one of our questions, which is, it's tough, I mean, Lenny's over here from Seven Hills Behavioral Health, so shout out to Lenny and those guys for having you on our show. And Lenny and their group comes to our youth center, and we talk about PrEP, and we talk about PrEP. Do you want to talk a little bit about PrEP with Timothy?
Yeah. We had talked a little bit earlier and about PrEP. A lot of guys are taking it now, and it's, my understanding is it blocks the uptake of the HIV virus. So you have to take it daily. You have to take it religiously. You can't stop, and it's not a fail-safe like, oh, I had unsafe sex, I'm going to pop a pill. There was a study done on where you could take it 1 day before you had unsafe sex, and the day of, and then for 2 days afterwards. I decided that was too complicated, so I take it daily.
Yeah, I think daily would be much easier than taking which is the day?
Exactly.
So PrEP is available for people in the community, and you can get it through the community health center. You can get it through your doctor. Sometimes doctors aren't as familiar with it. I know for myself, I had to educate some folks about it. But it is an option for people today.
Definitely.
So just real quick, the formerly New Bedford Family Planning guys is now called the Health Imperatives New Bedford, and they actually joined the South Coast LGBTQ network, and they help with birth control, emergency contraceptive, HIV prevention, PrEP, and PEP, we just talked about, STI testing, including HIV, Hep C, and cancer screenings. So they're at the first floor at the Howling Place building, which is on 651 Orchard Street, Suite 100 in New Bedford. So there's plenty of places to reach out. And again, Seven Hills, they're out and about. Greater New Bedford Health is out and about. If you guys have any questions, this show's still going on, I just take a commercial break in my head. You can just send me an email at Traci, Traci, at sclgbtqnetwork.org, and AJ will pop that up on the screen for us, so, go ahead, honey.
No, I was just going to ask some questions. Now, have you had any negative effects from taking PrEP? You said you're taking it now.
No, not.
You're taking it now as a precaution.
Yeah, yes,
Right.
yeah, exactly.
You're going to protect your status.
Yeah, exactly. I do not want HEV again. I've been there, done that. I don't want it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah. I had some like naysayers, people saying that you're immune to HEV, and so and it's very unlikely that you'll get HEV. But there are two doorways for the virus to enter into the cell, into the CD4 cell. One is CCR5, which is the main way, and my cure actually blocks that. Yeah, I am immune to any virus that enters through that doorway. But there is another doorway. It's called CXCR4, otherwise known as CX4. And I talked to a researcher that knew, knew as far as you can, that PrEP would block that. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to take that drug and take Truvada and make sure I don't get HEV again. And it's there have only been 3 cases of people getting HEV who were on PrEP. It's because their partners had a virus that was where PrEP didn't actually work anymore, and so
3 out of a million?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's amazing. There's only 3 people that have contracted, and my understanding with PrEP is that it blocks a majority of the HIV strains that you find in the United States. However, there could be a strain in the world because HIV mutates. That's how difficult it is to treat. So that with the mutation, you could be exposed to one that PrEP does not cover, but that's rare.
Yeah.
But it's amazing, and they're working on perhaps a PrEP injection, so it could be a 3-month or a year.
that would be
that'd be
better,
great,
because I know when I was taking the pill for being female, my female issues, I'd be like, oh crap, did I take it today? I have to look at my thing, and I'm like, how many days are there in the month? And I'm like, oh my God, you know, so having that, even some of the women have that piece of it in their arm, and oh, God help me, I don't want to go through that anymore.
Can I ask, now, in the United States, this would be incredibly expensive. What was it in Germany? How was it paid for? Was it paid through your employer? Or was it paid through the German government?
Germany has it's a competitive system, so it's capitalism sort of, but it's leans more toward democratic socialism. There are state insurance companies, and they compete against each other for providing better services than the other. They compete according to price, and then there are private insurers, and you have to earn more than like 5,000 euros a month to be in that category. Because I wasn't earning that money, my insurer was public, and they paid for everything, all of my medical care. The only thing I had to pay for is dental.
That's funny.
Except dental for crowns and bridges, they would pay if you'd been to a dentist every year. For every year, you got 10% reduction off of the cost of the other dental work. Otherwise, dental visits were free. So the whole time I had HEV, I lived in Berlin, and so they paid for my medication and also paid when I became ill with leukemia.
So I know you said you had gone over to Berlin and you're living abroad. What would have happened? Would you be sitting here today if you were living in the States?
Probably not. Yeah.
It just amazes us, especially for the financial
Oh,
part.
yeah, it's just amazing.
I doubt that anybody would, even though the United States has pretty brilliant researchers, especially working on HIV cure, I doubt that anybody would have come up with this idea. And also the cost would have been astronomical, and probably if this had happened here, I'd be poorer than I am now.
Yeah, very.
So during our research, it said as of 2017, 6 more people also appear to have been cleared of HIV after getting graft versus host disease. Only one of them had received the CCR5 mutant stem cell. So it appears that when a transplant recipient has graft versus host disease, the transplant cells may kill off the host's HIV-infected immune cells, with 6 possibly cured. Why isn't this treatment more widely available to those with HIV?
Well, for one thing, in order to get a stem cell transplant, you have to have a blood cancer, like leukemia, lymphoma, I think they could do it. I actually, when I visited Honolulu, Hawaii, I spoke at the University of Hawaii in 2015, I think. Yeah, my partner's nodding.
He's like, yep.
Yeah, I met this guy who heard me speak, and he came up to me afterwards and he said, "I'm like you. I have HIV and also the same kind of leukemia. It's called acute myeloid leukemia, AML." He was going to get a transplant in Seattle at Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center. Unfortunately, he found out that his insurance would not cover his.
Wow.
So he ended up going to the City of Hope in California. Actually, it's kind of like in our backyard. I live in Palm Springs, California, and City of Hope is not too far away. So he got his transplant there, and I told him, he asked for advice, and I said, have them look for a donor who has the mutation, so the CCR5 delta 32 mutation, and there is heterozygous and homozygous. Homozygous means that both parents have that mutation, and it's a good mutation. And heterozygous means that one of the parents has that. In his case, he himself was heterozygous.
Oh, wow.
And they found a donor who was homozygous, and he was hoping to get a transplant from that donor. Unfortunately, that donor had health problems and could not do it. So he got a donation from a donor who was heterozygous. So he's had his transplant, and he's doing pretty well. I talk to him on the phone regularly, and his doctors are saying that he kind of wants to go off of medication just to see what will happen.
Yep.
And he figures if anything negative happens, he can just start his HIV meds again. And the main doctor who's working on his case says that he thinks that he should continue to take his medication for now.
I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Yeah, right. So I think he might be one of the 6 people that.
One of the 6.
Yeah.
So during the research, Andy and I were talking offline. We had lunch today, Panera Bread. Shout out to you guys. Roughly 1% of people of European ancestry have this inherited mutation, but it is rare in other populations. So we were just kind of talking how amazing it is that they're immune of this, and I think it's terrific. And how did somebody even find that out, But for whoever it was that gave you the transplant and all that, and for stepping up, kudos. You have a question?
Nope.
He's like, nope. So you're cancer-free. And you've been in remission for how long now for leukemia?
11 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations.
So, yeah, she's well, okay.
Yeah.
Actually, it's 10 because I didn't really mention that after, I had the first transplant in February 2007.
Yeah.
But at the end of the year, the leukemia came back. Yeah, so I had to get a second transplant. Luckily, that donor said he'd do it again.
Yeah.
And so I got another transplant also in February of 2008.
Wow.
And I haven't had any problems up till now. Yeah, and they say after 5 years with cancer, if you remain in remission for 5 years, you're pretty much guaranteed that you won't. Pretty much.
Definitely have to keep us posted. So commercial break, psych. There's a couple things going on in the community, guys. Timothy, I have a couple more questions for Timothy, but I want to make sure we talk about this. Thursday night at St. Peter's Episcopal Church, 351 Elm Street in Dartmouth. I know, no I's here. The Berlin patient, as Timothy is known as. He's going to be having a meet and greet from 6 to 7, addressing everybody from 7 to 8, and kind of like a reception afterwards from 8 to 9. And I'll be there for that. I'll see you there definitely for that. It's important to tell stories, and that's one of the reasons that we have this show, to kind of like bring light and that there is hope out there. A couple of other things that I know Lenny's behind me over here, but Seven Hills Behavioral Health and us, the South Coast LGBTQ Network, and several others are having a free and open to the public family and fun night. It's a social and emotional wellness night, and I'll be here with us, so I can't be there. Other people from the network will be there. But from 5:30 to 7:30 at 888 Purchase Street in New Bedford, there's face painting, arts and crafts, kids yoga class, Zumba class, having free raffles, and I guess FHR Country Street Band will be there. So again, if you guys want more information, you can hit me up on email, Traci at sclgbtqnetwork.org. And we're going to talk about sponsorship real quick. So if you guys want to sponsor this show, an ad space, you can hit up leo@thebedfordguide.com. If you have some questions for me, just email me. AJ will put up my link and Leo's link as well.
So it's listed in the main post.
It's in the main post. I just got told it was in the main post. A couple weeks ago, guys, we did a show and we had some transgender folks on our show, and we're talking about volunteering for Yes on 3. So in Fall River on tomorrow, God help me, there's too many events in my brain. That's why I have these notes, thank God. From 6:30 to 8 o'clock tomorrow night in Fall River Public Library, 104 North Main Street in Fall River. Yes on 3 is working hard to uphold Massachusetts non-discrimination protections for transgender people in public places like restaurants, retail shops, and hospitals. So join us September 12th from 6:30 to 8 at Fall River Public Library to learn how to help upcoming actions in the final weeks of our campaign. So we're going to try and get some local politicians to come on the show, talk about their views, and if you oppose the view, I'll be more than glad to have you on your show. One thing we talk about on our show is we talk. There's no yelling, there's no screaming, and we just kind of, let people, I'd love to hear your point of view, why you think it's not okay, or why the law should be changed back when it was granted in, 2016. So let me just make sure what else I have for notes. Those are our events. So this has changed your life, obviously, and I know it, in our research said in 2012, you started the Timothy Ray Brown Foundation in Washington. Is that still going on, and what's going on with that?
And unfortunately, because of financial issues, I had to let my advisor go.
Yep.
Yeah, it wasn't very pleasant, but and so I actually have not talked to him for over 2 years now, and he was helping me with the Timothy Ray Brown Foundation, which had morphed into Cure for AIDS Coalition with the Cure for AIDS report. I think it's still up on the internet. I don't know how up to date that is, but
Work in progress?
Yeah, I don't have anything to do with it anymore, and so I've decided to not work with him and just do things on my own.
Public
and-
speaking engagements,
Right, yeah.
different things.
Yeah, and I go to conferences and I meet people at conferences and get invited to speak places.
So you guys, when you're doing research, if you Google just the Berlin patient, you'll see speaking engagements that you've done, videos and whatnot.
Oh, I was going to ask, what would you say to the younger generation coming up? Because a lot of times, guys our age have seen a lot. The younger generation has not seen what we've seen, and they're a little bit more lackadaisical about safe sex, or taking PrEP. So what would you say? What would you say if you have a platform here?
I would say, most importantly, is if you have sex at all, you should get tested for HIV. If you're an intravenous drug user, you should as well. And if you test positive, it's not the end of the world. When I tested positive, I thought it was a death sentence. And at this point, because of the medication, now you can live a pretty normal life and with few negative side effects. And the life expectancy of a person with HIV is nearly as high as a person without it.
That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah. And so, yeah, just it's important that you get tested, and if you don't test positive, if you're negative, that you can take Truvada, and it will control your virus, and it's 99.9999999, et cetera,
And
effective.
Truvada's the PrEP that we were talking about earlier,
right.
guys.
And basically, you should remain safe, and it's not. I'm not preaching condom use anymore. Not that I ever did, because I obviously I didn't use it much. I think if you take PrEP, you're protected. Of course, you're not protected from excuse me, not from STIs, from sexually transmitted infections. If you're having sex where you can get an STI, go and see it. Go to a testing site and get tested for that too. And then it's become evident that there's a campaign called U equals U, which is undetectable, means untransmittable, and it means that if you're actually undetectable, which means a viral load below 200, you cannot transmit HIV at all. But it is important that Tony Fauci says U equals U if U really is U, meaning that that if a person really is untransmittable, or if they're really are undetectable, they cannot transmit HIV. Unfortunately, despite the advent of PrEP and the discovery of U equals U, the rates of people testing positive for HIV have gone up, probably because more people are willing to actually go get a test, and so that's good because they can start treatment, and if you start treatment, please take your medication as prescribed.
Definitely. Do you have anything else to add?
Well, with PrEP, in Massachusetts, you see the doctor every 3 months, and you're tested for STDs,
right,
which is good. But do you see that this is the beginning of the end, perhaps, maybe, or at least the beginning of the beginning of the end, as Churchill said?
Yeah, I do think that. Yeah, I think that. Well, a lot of researchers are saying now that if people do get tested and there's a thing called 90-90-90, meaning 90% are tested and 90% of those who are tested take their medication, and I can't remember what the other 90 is. So basically, if 90-90-90 actually works, it will mean a reduction, a further reduction of people being positive for HIV.
And listen to the doctors, not your partners.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah,
listen to
yeah,
the doctors.
Yeah, hopefully they know best. Well, thank you, Timothy, for being on the show. Andy, again, for
My pleasure.
co-hosting. Next week, we're going to be talking about LGBTQ awareness in the workforce. So if you have any questions about tonight's show or show topics in the future, sponsorship, hit up leo@bedfordguide.com or just email me for questions. And see you next week, guys. Take care. Bye now.
Thank you.
Boy, that went fast.
Yeah, wow.